it's required. You want to hire skilled people. The mobility of the workforce is huge, so you can have people move from one place to the other, sell house, buy a house. All those things are what makes it easy to set up a business. So anyway, that's what I did for many years, and then I came to France, and I thought France was the worst place in the world to do business. I thought the labor laws were terrible, the bureaucracy was terrible. And, you know, based on the kind of the background of doing business in India, that's what it seemed to me to be in France, and then decided to take the next step and go to India, and actually France looks pretty good. So, but anyway, I'm going to talk about some of the practical difficulties of setting up a business, not so much from the kind of things the government can do, but if you're in a multinational business and you want to go to India, what happens? First thing you have to, if you're doing a joint venture, you have to negotiate an agreement. If you're not familiar with Indian laws, if you're not familiar with how Indians negotiate, you're going to have a problem. It's very difficult. Time, we talked about time, we talked about negotiating strategies. You must understand the cultural context if you're going to do that. And so, you know, my advice would be make sure if you're going into India to do this, have a good Indian lawyer, have a good understanding of the background so that you make a good deal when you go there.
We have one in IPA.
Second, you know, you get into things, you know, second problem we had was to transfer money to India. Now, it seems to me what could be easier than sending, you know, foreign investment into India, that it would be very easy to do so. But if you try to go through the process of opening what they call an external commercial banking facility or an ECB facility, and you have to go through all the paperwork and the bureaucracy, you start pulling your hair out and say, why is it so difficult to send money into India? I can understand taking money out, but why should it be so difficult to send money? Those are the bureaucratic things that, you know, that make it difficult. Then you want to send an expat staff, maybe you want to send a couple of people from France to go to India to get established there and to manage the business. When you're sending, I came to France as an expat, and then many people come to the US as expats. There's a whole system there of support. But when you try to send someone from France who has never been to a country like India, you have to arrange for housing, schooling, visas, transportation, get them some cultural facilities to participate in. It's not easy. In India, outside of maybe Mumbai and Delhi, if you go to a smaller town, it is very difficult to get a foreigner to fit in and feel good about settling there. This is a practical issue. If you don't get a good management team into India, how are you going to open and run a big business? So these are kind of things I think we all have to be aware about that are much, much more, they seem to be very small in scale compared to this huge issue of you know, skill development, etc., or infrastructure. But practically, these items become very, very important. So then, you know, another step is to start staffing your facility. Now, there are a huge number of well-trained engineers and you know, other professionals in India, but the demand far exceeds the supply. So what you will find is, you know, let's say you want to have a financial, you know, a CFO for your company, and you need somebody who's familiar with IFRS and US GAAP, and you can find people, but the number of companies who want to poach those people away from you is huge. So you first pay somebody a 50% premium to steal them away from someone else, and they'll be there for 6 months, and guess what? Somebody else will come in and steal them back from you, pay another 50%. So this round robin goes in, and so to keep your business staffed is not easy. Then you come to the unskilled, or the skills. The first I'll go to the skilled workforce. You want to develop a skilled workforce, and that's where I think is the real problem in India. I think the government has this initiative to set up 15, 20 IITs. It's a good initiative for engineers. I think what they need to set up is hundreds and hundreds of what they call ITIs, or industrial training institutes. That's what we need. We need electricians, mechanics, trained people who can run machines. Not so much, we can get engineers, but we can't get these kind of people who can really, you know, staff a factory and keep the machines running and keep that going. That's where we run into a problem. Even when it comes to unskilled people, I'll give you an example. We have a factory in a rural area, 60 kilometers from Hyderabad. Our workforce is drawn from the local village. We hired 100 women from the local village as unskilled labor. When they came to work, first of all, they were all illiterate. They could not read or write. Secondly, they came in to work without wearing any shoes. It's a bad idea to work in a glass plant if you don't have shoes on. So you have to understand that's the context. You have to provide that, and you have to take a long-term outlook. So what have we done? We have set up a school for women in the village. When will the payback come? Probably 10 years from now, we'll have the next generation of women who have learned at this school, who will come in and provide a source of labor for us. But this is not something that's going to happen overnight. So you have to think kind of long-term. If you want to make money, if you want to set up a business and be successful in India, it's going to take years. In a short-term perspective, it's just not going to work. Some other issues, and I think those will become big issues when we talk about, is infrastructure. We've talked about electricity, having high quality. It's not just having electricity, but having high quality electricity where the voltage does not fluctuate. There's some great infrastructure projects. If you go to Hyderabad, the airport is absolutely beautiful. I think it's one of the best airports I've been to. The 6-lane highway going from Hyderabad to Bangalore is incredible. The problem is, if you have a factory 2 miles away from the highway, there are no paved roads. And so if you're transporting glass on this unpaved road to get to the highway, it's only 2 miles, but it brings you to a total standstill. So, those are practical difficulties that you have to face, and you have to figure out how to deal with those. The bureaucracy that makes it very difficult to do business. For example, export is clearly a strategy in India. We went in to set up a business that we could use for export. The number of forms you have to fill to export product is incredible. I was just reading one of the studies here was an OECD study. It's very interesting because they actually did a regression on the number of forms it takes to export a product compared to the foreign direct investment. And I don't know how they did the study, but they said a country where it takes 9 forms to export a product has 37% less foreign direct investment than a country that takes 7 forms. So, those are the kind of things you kind of scratch your head and you say, what do we need to do? I think you can capture all this and kind of, what we call ease of doing business. And I think what India is going to have to do, if we don't get out of 142nd place, this is not going to work. The only way we're going to be successful is to really make a rapid leap forward. And I agree also with the master when he said that you cannot judge. I think this is a great initiative the government's come out with. You cannot judge the results after 1 year. However, I think, and there was a recent New York Times article which said, the biggest negative or the biggest mistake of the government has been to set expectations too high. The expectations were that things would change quickly, and now you've started hearing the discontent. If you talk to businessmen in India a year ago, everybody was kind of euphoric. Everybody said, wow, now is the time for change, things are going to change, this is going to be a different country. If you talk to them today after a year, and this is being unfair, I think, on the government, but if you talk to them, there's many, many whispers of nothing's happening, years gone by, nothing has changed. And so I think that's a cause for concern. I think if another year goes by and still nothing happens, these kind of whispers of discontent will become, a huge kind of crescendo. So I think the government needs to really be careful and, think about and do things quickly, because, the business community, not just the foreign business community, but the Indian business community is waiting for things to happen. So with